Hi everyone, we'll be making a very simple BMI calculator today. So before I start, let's give you a little bit of demo of what we are trying to make. So this is how our app is gonna look. We have a field that says what's your weight and what's your height. And once you plug in those values, so like value in, so this only for now takes values in lbs and height in inches. So 120, height can be like 60 maybe. And then once you hit calculate, it gives you what your BMI is. And at the same time, it also tells you, okay, which range do you fall into? So for example, if you bump it up to 40, it also tells you, okay, now your BMI has increased, and it also, like, you also have went into the overweight portion or section of your chart maybe. Okay, so this is what we're going to make. And this is an Android app and it's written in Kotlin. So the first thing we're gonna do is, this is the code, and I'm gonna start a new project by going File, New Project. This is where it's asking you which type you want, what type of an activity you want. So let's go with empty activity, and I'm gonna name this BMI calculator. And the other thing you have to pay attention to, so package name is just reverse, just this, and the location where you want to put your file in. Make sure it is in Kotlin. And then the minimum API should be what's the recent one. So the recent one as of today, 2020, is API 29. So let's click that and click finish. And now it's getting set up and creating our file for us. So wait until it loads up, and then the first thing we have to do, even before we run the project, is go under your Gradle script, and we have this file called build Gradle module app. Click on it, and we're targeting the minimum SDK version. So it has to be 15 so that when your app runs on older devices, it can run properly. So once you do that, do sync now. So it's building the project. And now let's run it and see what happens. So Ctrl+R in Mac, it's a keyboard shortcut to run your project. And it should pop up here. Okay, so this is how our app looks like. It just have one text field that says hello world, and great place to start. We know everything's working, and now we can go ahead and start building our project. So before we do that, let's do a rundown of our file directory. So for Gradle script, the only thing you have to do is, like, for now, just worry about this part, and then you don't even have to open this anymore. And then I'm under here, so projects, and then you have a couple of different options. Go for Android, and then you have a couple of folders. So you have manifest that holds the main metadata. So I'm just going to give you the basic things you need to get up and running. So we're only going to worry about this Java folder. And even in the Java folder, don't worry about the tests, just do the first one, and we have a main activity. And then under Rest, you have drawable layout, blah, blah, blah. We're just worried about the layout part that holds activity underscore main. So what are these things? To give you an idea, so I come from, like, I did web development before I started Android development, and I feel there is a lot of resemblance. So in web development, you have HTML, and then the HTML gets connected to a JavaScript. But here it's the other way around. So we have this main activity.kt. KT stands for that the file is written in Kotlin. And then in here, we are connecting this main activity to our layout. So every activity you see, so currently this app only has one activity, but an activity is made up of two parts. It has a layout part, which is responsible for how the app's gonna look, the visual portion. And then we have KT, or the main activity folder, that holds all the logic behind those designs. So an activity is like every page the app opens into, and then activity has two parts, the main file, the Kotlin file, and which is connected to the design file or the layout file of how it's going to look. So now that is out of the way, let's work on our main activity, which is activity_main, and let's minimize this and work on this. So I'm gonna get rid of this text view. So if you right click on it and do delete, it's gonna go away. And now we have to make sure how our app's gonna look. So this is how our app's gonna look. We have a weight text view, we have a place for the weight to be plugged in. Same thing for height, we have a calculator, and then we have another text view that says your result. So let's start grabbing those things. So we need a place for weight. We have this error because it's saying that it's not constrained. And what that means is like it has to be, this text view has to be hooked in 4 directions. So if you right click on it and if you do center horizontal, that means it's going to hook it on the left and right side. And then we can just hook this here. And we're not going to hook it until this because we're going to bring in something and then we're going to hook that to this. So the next thing, and let's name it weight. And I'm going to bring in another text view because let's bring in all the text views. We need 3 of them. And then we need also a field where the user can plug in values. So that's called a plain text. But because we know it's going to be a decimal value, the better option would be to do number decimal so that even if it's not a decimal value, even if you do 120, it's going to be 120.0. But even someone does do 120.7, then in that case, it catches that 0.7 portion. So we're going to be here. And then we need another one. Okay, I messed up the order and let's restart. Let's get things in order. So we have one text view right now. And the next thing we're going to do is grab the field where the user plugs in their weight. So let's hook it horizontally, and then we're going to hook this to our top one. Okay, and let's give it a little bit of space of like 8. And also the initial one, 8. The next thing we're going to bring in is another text view. And this time it's going to say height. Let's center it horizontally. And then let's hook this to here. And we're going to give it a little bit more space than the first one. So like 16. And then we're going to bring in another value. Also going to center it horizontally, and then we're going to hook this here. and also give it a space of 18. Okay, and now we want to grab the button and then let's constrain it horizontally, give it a bit more space, 24, and let's call it, let's do calculate. So it says calculate on the button. And then the last thing we need is another text view. Center it horizontally. And then I'm going to give it a bit more space, 24. And this is where our info is going to be. So let's see how it looks. So if you're doing through keyboard, the shortcut is Ctrl+R, but you can also do it from here. Do Ctrl+Run. And this is how our app looks like. So not exactly what we are aiming for. Like this is, everything's very bolded and this is in the middle, but sort of like it. So the next thing we're gonna do is make some styling changes for like better visual. So what we can do is right away change the colors. So I'll grab this one, the first one, and if you do control, you can grab this one. So it like grabs all three together. And then once you go into the attributes, you have a lot of values that you can like play around. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, if you scroll down, you'll see text color. And once you click on it, there's like a whole range of colors. So I'm gonna go with black. And I'm gonna make the button, press Control to get a hold of the last text view too. And I'm gonna make both of them bolded. So if you go down again, you'll see text style, and if you click on it, there is normal, bold, italics. I want bold, so I'll click on this, and they're a little bolded. And then I want to increase the font size of the first one, second one. So Control, click on it, and then Command text view 4. And then let's do text size. Text size 18, a little bigger. And then I want this info to be the biggest one. So again, text size 24. Okay, looking better. Now some other things that I want to do is like these fields are empty right now, so like a user may be confused, like do I plug my weight in kg, or do I plug my weight in pounds, or like what would be the unit of my height? So to give them information of what we are expecting, there is an attribute called hint. So once you go into hint, you can do in LBS. So the user knows that we're expecting a value in LB. Similar thing for height, we want it in inches. And the next thing we are going to do is make these hints come in the middle. So I can do, again, I'm grabbing both of them at the same time. So edit text 3, command edit text 4. So both of them are selected. And now if you go into, we're looking for gravity. So gravity, and then if you do center, these hints are going to be in the center. So let's run it again and see how it looks right now. So this is how our app looks. And this is the activity. So when you click on this, it does pull up a calculator. You can plug in information, Same thing for height. You can plug in a value, but once you click calculate, nothing happens because we haven't written any code in the main activity portion. And that's the brain of your application. That's where logic happens. And activities are, or the activities under our layout is just for the visual purpose, so how it's going to look, and then the logic happens in the main activity. So the last thing before I close off the activity is what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the IDs. So if I go here, it says text view. And then if I go here, it says also text view 4. So I want something, an ID that makes sense. So, and I don't want IDs for all of them. I can only give IDs to this one, this button, and this info. So for this edit text, I'm going to give it an ID of weight, edit text, and it's going to say that this is going to be upgraded everywhere. So yes. Same thing for height, edit text, yes. For the button, you can leave it a button, but I want it to be shortened, so btn, yes. And then for the info, I'm going to give it info text. Make sure they all have IDs. Wonderful. Okay, so we are done with our activity portion. So let's work on the main or the logic part of our code. So far, like when you compile the project, like these codes come in by default, and you don't have to understand each part right now, but just understand that this line is very important. And what this line is doing, it's saying to this main activity that, hey, your layout is this layout. Like in HTML, when you do script source app.javascript, so it's like it's kind of like linking your HTML with your JavaScript. So similar concept. So this is where this main KT or Kotlin file is attaching the logic to this layout. So when things happen, we're going to do all our coding after this point. So after line number 10. So, and we're going to start off with very like basic. We're not even going to worry about the whole calculator thing. We're just going to take one step at a time. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make this info text invisible. So in order to make this info text invisible, I have to go down, and then its ID was info text, then visibility equals view dot invisible. So by just writing this line, what it does is it's going to make this info invisible, because we don't want there to be info. We want there to be a value that actually represents what values gets plugged in. So let's run the app, and okay. So even though we have our info text in there, like if we go into our layout, we have this info text that says info, but because of this line, it's invisible. Good. So the next thing we want to do is when we click on this button, this info text becomes visible. So that's our next task. So task 2 is when we click on this button, there is an action attached to this button, and once that gets clicked, like the info becomes visible again. So in order to do that, first of all, we have to know what is the ID of this button. And if you don't remember, you can always go here, and then this was our button, and our ID is btn. So we're going to do btn dot set on click listener. So I clicked too fast. Let's go back again. So if you do dot you're going to see that a lot of things are available, and we need an set on click listener, and we want the second one that has the curly braces, so it's a function. And what it's going to do is when you click on it, set on click listener, so it's a listening for a click, and whenever someone clicks, something happens, or whatever inside in the function, it's going to happen. It's going to get triggered once a user clicks on the button. So we want the second one that has the curly braces. And once you grab that, we can grab this line again and paste it. And our task is when someone clicks on the button, we want it to be visible. So just make it from invisible to visible, and let's run it again. So our info is not visible anymore, so when you click, it gets visible. So good. So the next task would be, let's comment this out. So in order to comment a line, you can put double slashes, and it's going to get commented out. If you want to know the keyboard shortcut, so for Mac is Command/. So we're not going to make it visible again. We have to grab the information before we can make it visible. So we have an on-click listener on our button. So the next task we want to do is whatever values the user plugs in into the height and the weight, we can store it into a variable. So we want to grab the user's information into variables. So to make a variable in Kotlin, we want to do var weight. We know it's a double, so double equals. So now the fun part. So how do you get the value that's get plugged in here into this? So the way to do that would be, we have an ID, so weight edit text, and then dot text, then toString dot to double, yes. Okay, so what just happened? A lot of code for one line. So this part, we're just saying, okay, we need a variable which is of type double, and that variable is going to be coming from here. So this field has an ID of this. So ID of weight edit text. So if you just do weight edit text, it's going to grab every attribute of that ID. So what's the color, what's the size, but we don't want all of them. We just want the text. And then from the text, we convert it to a string. And then the string gets converted to a double. Because if you keep it a string and if you're adding like 2 plus 2, it's going to be 22. You're not actually doing math operation. So the same thing I'm going to do for weight. I'm not going to write the line. I'm going to use another keyboard shortcut. So if you do Command D, so it duplicates the line. So, and then I'm just going to change it to height. So we have a variable for our weight. We have a variable for our height. So let's just see if we can actually grab these values. And in order to see, we are going to run it in our logcast. So log dot I, and I'm going to explain this in a second, and then message comma weight is weight comma height is height. Okay, so what just happened? So we have a code that says log.I, and then we have a message and we have what the message is. So log is because I want to print this out, print this value out in our logcast. And the reason I did I is because like if you click here, it has a lot of things. So I just want to print it in the info. I don't want to, if it's your wish where you feel like, I feel debug would be a good option, but info is what I'm going with. But if you want to do a debug, then it would be log.d. And then because there's so many information, it can be overwhelming to find them. So just do plus 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 before so that you don't have to look at all the information. So once it runs, it's just gonna pick up this one, which starts with three pluses. So once we run this, okay, so this is our app. We have a weight variable, a height variable. Let's plug in our values, 120. Let's do height 60. And once we click calculate, it's gonna print a log statement in our logcast console. So calculate, we have a value. So weight is 120, height is 60. So we're actually able to grab the values. And we are also able to see this. So very good. So the next task we want to do is calculate the BMI. So how do you go about calculating BMI? So I have some notes written here. So in order to calculate the BMI is weight times 703 divided by height square. And I'm also going to need this information, so I'm going to bring all of them together. So I'm going to put this right after our class, and then I'm going to comment this out. So our next task is just to calculate the BMI. So in order to calculate the BMI, let's make it a variable, var BMI. We know it's a double. And then let's plug in the equation. So weight times 703 divided by height times height. Okay. And then we're going to do the log statement again. And then this time we're going to do BMI is BMI. So let's run it. So again, weight 120, height is 60. Click calculate. So weight is this, height is this, and our BMI is 23.433333. So yes, we get our BMI, but now the problem is we don't want such a big number. We want it to chunk it to 2 decimal. And we also want to get it displayed over here. So next task. So we want our info to be visible again. So let's grab this. And let's put it underneath here. And then we also want to do info text dot text equal BMI is BMI. So now our info text will be visible, and it's also going to be visible with the value we calculate. So let's see if it actually does that once we click on it, and then we can worry about, okay, how do we get it to 2 decimal figures? 120, 60, yep, we get our BMI, which is a very long number. So how do we make it to 2 decimal figures? So in that case, what we have to do is string dot format, and then because we want 2 decimal figures, it's going to be this dot 2f, and then what value do you want to format? So we want to format our BMI. So the string dot format, what it does is it takes a value and it also takes an argument, like how many decimal figures do you want? So we want 2. And what value do we want to like constrain, or do you want to format? So in this case, we want to format BMI. So again, run. So 120, 60, calculate your BMI is 23.43. Cool. So we have our BMI. So what's the use of BMI if you don't know which category do you fall into? And that's where these information comes in. So we want to figure out a way where we can plug in the BMI into a function, and the function tells us, okay, are you a normal person? Are you underweight? Are you overweight? Are you obese? What category of BMI, what's your BMI falls into? So that's our next task. And to get that task done, yes, you can get it done over here, but I want to separate that into a function. So we need a function, and the function will be inside this class, the main class. So the main class ends here, and this is where the onCreate ends. So after onCreate, I'm gonna do fun BMI res. It's gonna take in a value, and it's also gonna return a value which is of type string, and then parentheses where the logic of the function happens. And the parameter for the function is BMI, which is of type double. And we also need a var answer, and it's going to be an empty string for now. And then our if else happens. So like if you are below this, you're underweight. If you are between this, you're normal. And then if you're between this, you're overweight. And if you're greater than those values, you're obese. So if the BMI is less than this value, your answer is going to be underweight. And then I'm going to copy this again, and then else if your BMI is between this, so in this case it's going to be greater than 18.5 and the BMI is going to be less than 24.9, the answer is you are normal. And else, oops, I should have and for overweight it has to be 25 and less than 29.9. In that case, overweight. And the last thing that is, it is if it's greater than 30, so I'm not going to do an if on it, it's just going to be else. And your answer is obese. And then we're going to return the answer. Return answer. Okay, so we have our function that takes in a value, takes in the VM value, and it has this logic. It decides, okay, depending on what the value is, it decides, okay, are you underweight, are you normal, are you overweight, are you obese? So we have the function, and if you notice, this is grayed out because it's Kotlin's way of saying, okay, it's not being used in our code. So once you use it, it's going to be not grayed out, it's going to be in black. So we're going to use this here. So BMI is this, and you are, and then I'm going to call the function from here, BMI res, and then pass in the value BMI. So the BMI function, the BMI res function takes in the value decides what it is, returns the answer, and the answer holds, okay, what you are, which category. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so we have our page. We plug in 120. Our height is 60 in inches. Once you click calculate, it calculates that your BMI is 20.43, and according to the logic of this function, you are normal. So for example, you gain 20 pounds and you are 140 right now. So let's calculate the BMI. So your BMI increases to 27 and you're overweight right now. Let's gain another 20 pounds and then become 160. And let's calculate, and now you're obese. And if you drop 60 pounds and you become 100, let's see what happens. You're 19, you're still normal. And let's drop another 10 pounds. Now you're overweight. So that was our simple project in Kotlin. We got a lot done. We understood what if else does, how variables work, and how to grab values from your activity and manipulate it, and also debug things in the console, in the log cast. So I hope you learned a lot from this.